I think that writing is another stage of professional development. Not everyone goes the direction. Some do, some do not. But it's a stage. I think you probably know that you are good therapists. You most probably know that you're good supervisors and teachers and whatnot. But writing is another stage. And I believe that if we take it like this, it's something that we really want to invest in it and go on. I know all the inhibitions, I know all the problems that people have about this, but still it's something doable, and let's, as a group, help each other to move on and do something with this. So with your permission, let's go to the introductory round, and each one of you, please present yourself and something, an idea, interest, a writing project, whatever you would have in mind that we can work on later in the smaller groups. Okay, so who would like to begin?
We'll just do it across.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, most of you know me. I'm Melinda Meggs, and I'm obviously a member of BAPPS. I'm the very oldest, probably now, member of BAPPS. And I also had the idea of putting BAPPS in touch with PP in order to make us more available to the world and have a different way of getting published and such. So I was asked in the early days of those meetings by Anne to write a history of BAPPS, which I have never done. I did edit a BAPPS review on the history, but it was different people writing about that. And so that's where I am.
Good, good. History of BAPPS. Okay. Who can be next? Roger, ready? Yes.
So something about my other work, and very much my other work as a psychotherapist, my other work is working with people. I conduct their funerals. So I'm wanting to think about something about that interface, giving voice to people. It's what I give voice to people in that small intimate group, those who come to the funeral, and there's the tribute or the, you know, there's the account of the person's life, but something about what that says to all of us. So something about how we can think about these in the time of death, how we can actually think about what somebody or each life in its time of conclusion and what it says to us, what it says to all of us.
Wonderful. I thought a lot about your two jobs and how you put them together. I'm sure that it's mutually productive and fertilizing each other, I'm sure. Okay, that's good. Wonderful. Who ready to move on? Yeah, Ellen.
Okay, Roger's given me a wonderful idea, which is two wonderful ideas. The first one of which I would like to contract with you, Roger, now to conduct my funeral, because I can't think of anyone that I would rather do that for me. So you're contracted. The second thought that came in when Hannah suggested this was that I was going to do an MSc dissertation many years ago when I was a psychiatric social worker with an outplacement while I was doing my master's in a GP surgery, looking at the destigmatization of mental health and looking at the recidivism rate of whether patients were primary care or secondary care, and the difference in the dignity and the attitudes and things. And this we're talking about 30 years ago, because I then went on maternity leave, and I thought very naively, oh, that's great, I'll be on maternity leave, I can write my dissertation. But then my baby arrived, and I had primary maternal preoccupation, and nothing was more important than communing with my baby. And this dissertation, or I'd done all the research, and I was given delays to get it in. I never ever wrote it up, and that gave me writer's block, because I came from a very academic family, and I am not, never purport to be an academic. And therefore that got solidified in me. So one of the things I'm really interested in here is the dynamics of writing and what that actually purports to be. And the other thing is that, just been triggered by Roger, is that I've got a huge task ahead of me, in that my daughter, who is married to a very fervent atheist, if there is such a thing, got married a couple of years ago in a civil ceremony. And they've always wanted to have a wedding celebration as a festival. And she's asked me to be the celebrant. And the thought of, I'm going to have to write something. I can't just stand up there and open my mouth. I'm going to have to write something for that. And I'm feeling quite daunted, quite overawed by it. And if there's one thing I would really, really like to do well, it would be that. So I know it's not, strictly speaking, psychodynamic practice, but it's very much about the psychodynamics of a relationship and their family. And so I'm just bringing myself in quite a raw state, and I'll stop speaking now.
Interesting too. Very okay. Who else we have here?
I just wanted to take part in this workshop today because of trainees sometimes who I supervise, and they're writing papers, and I just feel that the ethics around writing papers and data protection and everything has really changed, and I just was hoping to learn something around ethics and data protection and how we be respectful to, you know, who we're writing about, really.
Mm-hmm. All right. Okay. Martha, can you jump in?
Hi, so my name is Marta. I'm a counseling psychologist, and I'm an academic as well. So I have to write because it's either publish or perish in academia. Hanok is my clinical supervisor. I've published research related to psychodynamic supervision, but I've never actually supervised. So I interviewed supervisors, I interviewed supervisees, but I myself have never been a supervisor as yet. And what I'd like to perhaps think about today is that I have familiarity working with research papers and different methodologies, but I want to learn how to write a theoretical paper, and I have some ideas about like envy and supervision. I've been reading some stuff, but envy and supervision from an object relations perspective, and I would like to kind of learn how to write an actual theoretical paper as opposed to a kind of methodology based one. So that's me, and I'm Maltese, so I'm currently based in Malta. That's me.
Okay.
My name's Margaret. I have a private practice of clients and supervisees, and I also I supervise groups of mostly trainees, 4 groups of 3 in the groups. I get to hear quite a lot of stuff, and I'm quite interested in how parallel process happens, and linked in with that, secondary trauma. First of all, I thought they were different. I thought they were, sort of not necessarily connected, but I now realise that they are, and also the impact that has on boundary issues. This is all very much thinking, in the thinking stage, really, at the moment, and I'm sort of thinking through these three things.
Wonderful. Interesting. Yeah.
Morning, I'm Patsy.
Yes.
I mean, first of all, Hanek, I couldn't agree more that writing is, I agree with that notion, writing is another stage of professional development. And therein lies, I think I've just had a block, just knowing that for years, feeling that there was a bit of me that wanted to write and that could, take me to another level. But at the same time, there's something about that notion that's, quite debilitating or paralyzing. I don't have a specific project in mind, but certainly I've got a lot of experience. I'm actually a couples therapist. So I've got loads of clinical cases. I teach in a couple of organizations, and I do a lot of supervision, again, in various organizations, some group and some individual. It's difficult to know which particular strands I would pull, but it all feeds each other. It's obviously it's all is, to use your word, cross-fertilizes each other, these different areas. It would be nice to get some paper, article, something written at some point. Yeah.
Something specifically interested you or drew you more into write or?
I mean, I suppose if I was going to think about a particular area, it would probably be something around my couple work.
Couple work. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it probably would be something around my couple work.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good. Interesting. Good. Okay. Anyone else? Yeah, we got everyone? Pretty much. Okay. First of all, I'd like to say that just saying out loud the interest that you have, the passion that you have, or something that you're thinking mind, that puts it in a different, for you, I think for everyone, it puts it in a different level. It's something that's being put out there, and there is some commitment to do something about it. So it's good. I think saying out loud what you are interested, or you have some direction, begin thinking about as a project, it is very good to put it out there. So that's good. So I'll start. I'll share now the PowerPoint. Let me just do this, and these are some principles that I would start with, and you can imply it when you have your discussion, when you think about developing your project. Let's think about these issues. All right, so again, these are the timetable that I sketched. Okay, principle. First of all, every idea has been uttered, has been expressed sometime in the past. So, but it is no reason to avoid treating it, to avoid relating to it, to avoid putting your own research into. And you have a special idea, your special perspective with your special experience is something that takes you to different places that other people go. So that's good, and let's just go with this. You have a specific, unique angle, and please take it on. And the way I would like you to think about this is like a story. A paper in psychoanalytic paper is a story that you have to tell the world. For me, it helps a lot it's the major principle to think about writing papers. It's a story. Remember that psychoanalysis is both a science, but also an art. It's something expressive, and it's something that has to do with observation and clinical material. So it all can be arranged only through a story to tell. And a story needs to be a story. Let's think about it a little later, but a story is a story, and you can go along with this. It's important that you think about it as a story. A good story is a good story. Let's think about what is a good story. Oh, you can ask and say and share. I'm just looking forward for this. First of all, a story needs to be engaging, something that your listener, your reader is really engaged in this. And you have to arouse the reader's interest and to intrigue them. A good story needs to be aesthetic. It's something aesthetic. It has to be something pleasant to listen to, pleasant to think about in the same line. It has to be reasonable. You know, one thing leads to another. There is a flow of reasoning. There is a cause and effect. There is a sequence, and we take care of this. The other thing is being dramatic. Dramatic is something that raises people's interest and put them on edge and get them into thinking what this guy is about to say next. And I think that dramatic can be in different ways. We can talk about this separately, but it needs to be also dramatic. So think about a good story. And afterwards, when you read your paper, or somebody else reads your paper, it needs to be read like a story. By the way, it's not only in psychoanalysis, not only in psychology, in other areas as well. But in psychoanalysis, it's very, very much so. Secondly, is think about your target audience. Who are you referring to? Who are you writing to? Who would you like to read and get impressed with your ideas? And when you have them in mind, it's easier to direct your attention, to your efforts toward this readership. And how you can intrigue your audience. First of all, I think it's a good way to start a paper, either by a short excerpt from poetry, a short excerpt from philosophy. One of the big philosophers said something to the effect that gets you thinking about this issue. It's very, I think it gives to the aesthetics of the paper, and it's something that can be done very easily. Or you put some excerpt from the forefathers of psychoanalysis, Bion, Winnicott, one of them. It's an inspiration for thinking about the issues afterwards, and the person, and it gets the person, you get the readers being more alert, more attentive to what you have to say. Or you can start with a short clinical example, clinical vignette. That's good because it involves people. People are clinicians. People who will read the paper will be probably clinicians. And clinicians are interested in what they know of and what they are very familiar with. And it's their clinical experiences that you touch and you really get them interested. Oh, by the way, I would like to take a little break here and say that in the journal that I'm a submissions editor, this is the psychodynamic practice, the British psychodynamic practice that Melinda talked about. There is a section that's called open space, right, Melinda? Open space. Open space is I think every one of you can direct your efforts to this section. This section is not a peer-reviewed part of the journal. it's read by only one editor, and it doesn't need to be an academic paper. It doesn't need to be a theoretical paper. It doesn't need to be very precise and according to academic regulations. It needs to be something that goes from the heart and gets to the heart. Could be something very clinical. Your thoughts, associations. You can be free with this open space. And I think that, like I'm thinking about now, Roger, about your main issue of integrating or putting together these two parts of you, the therapist and the priest that you are, and as they are expressed specifically in this ceremony that you spoke about. But I think that this is a wonderful place to publish a paper in, because it would get many people's interest. I'm sure, I know, as a potential reader, I know. So open space is a good place to publish. Well, we'll talk a little bit later about the stages, possible eligible publishing pages, stages. Would you like to comment? Anyone would say something about this, or it's too fast? Okay. Okay. So the best thing is if you put forward upfront your central issue, whatever it is, it's a dilemma, it's an undeveloped concept that you would like to further develop. It's an idea, it's another perspective of the same ideas that many people would talk about, but you have your specific angle. So you put forward the main issue, the main interest, because that sort of concentrates the reader's mind toward your the road that you are about to lead this person into. So that first. Secondly, explain how you will cope with this. I mean, I just give an example from my own writing. I'm now very much interested. My writing project is to the interface between psychoanalysis and existentialism. And I think probably many of you know that psychoanalysis has been divorced from philosophy by Freud, who really condemned philosophy as something irrelevant for psychoanalytic work. And many followed afterward. And then it became a political issue. And it's amazing to see how many of the big names of psychoanalysis have used existential insights and principles and never gave the credit for this. For example, Thomas Ogden, who says psychoanalysis has moved from epistemology into ontology. And Winnicott's true and false self, all coming directly from there. And beyond, speaking about the lived experience, learning from lived experience, where does this term come from? Anyway, so I'm trying to put together the two areas. And I think it's a big project that I take on myself around it, especially with supervision, but not necessarily in supervision. And I put it out forward, and I know that some people would not like the idea of mixing the two areas, and they can move on and not really, but some will probably get very intrigued by this. So I'm saying I would draw on existentialists. I will take this concept and that concept that are very well developed by existentialism and try to implement it within psychoanalytic writing. Another option is to draw on Bion, Winnicott, and others, the big names. You might say that I would like to develop an underdeveloped concept that Winnicott used when he did this and that. Winnicott put many concepts in a very ambiguous way. That was his way of opening up and not closing in, just opening our mind, our thought. And but you can take one of these concepts and go get this an inspiration for your development. And using a clinical example. It's another way of how I will go with this. All right, now you have to embed your issue in a conceptual network, where you have to think about which kind of language you would like for your paper, which kind of language would be best suited for your specific issue. Like self-psychological would be good with issues of, vulnerability, of narcissistic issues, of experience close attunement. Think about which language, not necessarily that you have to hang on to only one language, one approach, but it would be better if you have like most of the discussion in one language. It can be relational, it's about relationships, and so on. All right, you suggest some kind of solution. Solution is not something that needs to be solve all the problems and just nothing is left to wonder about. It's more, you can offer a new perspective. You can offer a new emphasis. That's good, that's wonderful. If you get there, it's wonderful for a psychological paper. If whatever you suggest, whatever you put forward is something that opens up new ways to think about the clinical issue, about the supervision, about the mixture of religious or believing ideas, things that pertain to beliefs and things that pertain to clinical issues, this is a wonderful way to contribute to the theory and the interest of others, the development of others. Now, clinical example. Clinical example does not have to prove and illustrate all that you have said before. You can take just one aspect of what you said before and to illustrate it through a clinical example. And the clinical example, let's think about how you go with this. Try to think, first of all, yes, you give the facts as they are and you explain them, you interpret them in the way that it illustrates your argument, fine. But some people would think, I would do it differently. I would not do the same stuff. So think about possible resistances, possible opposition to your, people who will read it are clinicians. They might think about other ways to treat the same issue. So if you offer, let's say, you say, this is my way of dealing with this, interpreting this clinical example, but there are other ways. For example, you could think about this in this way, you can think about it in that way. So this one, in this way, you sort of dismantle the other's possibility of getting you into trouble about it. Now, when you get to recommendation in the end, just I wrote here, think big. What does it mean? I mean, you can take off, you can go, you can fantasize about the word. There's no end to it. You finish with a clinical example, you finish with a direct and meticulous expressions, and you can think about how it adds to culture, how what you say might add to psychoanalytic community, to whatever, to the helping professions. Just go wild with this, so to speak. And very, very important that you get another eye or eyes to look and go through the paper you've written there were always some other angles that you haven't thought about. There are always, it's extremely important that somebody else would read it and comment on it. And then we have to not get insulted by whatever criticism comes up. Just take it as it is with others' goodwill, assuming that others have goodwill. Usually they do. Sometimes they don't. Strategies. When you pick something, it needs to be somehow close to people's mind and discourse. It needs to be something that the psychoanalytic discourse is dealing with, not too remote from it. And if it is remote, then explain how it relates to the psychoanalytic discourse, because people would like to speak their own language. Literature review should be organized. You know, why should be organized? Because people tend to think people tend to group, you know, neuropsychologically, we group objects and phenomena into larger groups so we can organize the world around us. So people look for some organization that you do with the literature. So either you arrange it historically from where, you know, in the beginning, in the inception of psychoanalysis, it used to be thought this and that, and then it developed into its current status. It could be from the general to the specific, from something more general that gives the background of your research, and then you move forward to be more specific and touch upon your specific issues. So that's important to arrange the literature. Again, if you write more clinical paper, not so theoretical academic paper, you don't need a lot of literature. Just some inspiration for what you're saying, and stay close to the clinical ideas, to your creative ideas. Just stay close to it. Now, clinical example that touches on something that Yvonne said before. We should keep the anonymity of the patient and the supervisee. If we write about supervision, we should protect it. That's mandatory that we do. There's different ways of protecting it. First of all, you can ask for a consent form from the person and just let the person sign up a consent form. But preferably, and with consent and without consent, try to not disclose details of the patient or the supervisee, and concentrate. It's very easy if you write about supervision, concentrate about your own involvement, your own responses, your own emotional reactivity to this, your thinking process, and not so much the details, the clinical details or the supervisory structure. So this is my way of dealing with the anonymity, and it is an issue now, getting more and more in academia, in psychoanalysis. So in any way that the patient will not be, a patient or supervisee will not be able to say, this is me, for sure. It could be me, it could be others, but if it's me, then we've missed the target. Okay, writing style. So we can be free with our writing style. We can write in different ways because we are different people, and we are different things are more we are more comfortable with. It can be more theoretical, academic, or more personal, clinical, and more emotional touch to it, or less. So try to be free with your personal style, writing style. use of language. Please be very careful not to use language that does not suit, that is not compatible with your argument. The strength of the word should be appropriate. For example, if you speak about something tentative or something suggestive, it shouldn't be presumably, arguably, apparently. Put it in a soft way. Don't show too much authoritative language here, but be more careful about this. This is very important. Sometimes there's more conclusive way of saying something, or you're more sure about saying something, then you can take a stronger description, stronger word like undoubtedly, but that's very, very rare that we really know something for sure in psychoanalysis. But yes, if sometimes you can put the more stronger words. Short sentences. That's something that people get. I mean, we have to write very complicated ideas in very simple ways. That's the art of it, not the other way around. Take very simple idea and make it the most complicated and mindering way, which some people do. But if you take shorter sentences, break longer sentences into short ones, that's great. Review of the literature should not be cut and paste. Like students, they do it a lot. You know, they write their thesis, they write their papers, they write a lot of cut and paste, but that's not the way we are expected to do it. It's more critical review. What does it mean? How does it go all together, the whole package of what I'm saying? And what's missing in it, or what's lacking in it, or what we would like it to be more developed. Be more critical. Don't be shy from this. Don't shy away from this. Literature, unless it's historical mentioning of forefathers and historical surveys, scanning of a concept, it should be updated. Updated means 2000 and upward, if possible. Sections. Don't turn the reading of the paper into something that gets the breath out of people's bodies. So, incorporate the analytic language. Now, in psychoanalysis or psychodynamic papers, we don't use certain language, we use other specific language. We use a lot reflecting, and we use a lot of expanding consciousness, sharing experiences, new and transformative experiences and stuff. It's very specific. If you write unconscious and you write conflicts and you write words like this, concepts like this, you are taken to be an old school person. It puts you in a certain section, stigmatizing you. So try to pick the right terms for, at least for the journal that you are targeting. We do not emphasize our authority because we don't really know. We don't really know what's going on in people's minds, what the meaning of patients' experiences. We assume, we get closer, we empathize. So put it in a right perspective. We don't express certitude. That's the same idea. We don't point to causality because we don't know that one thing led to another specifically. Sometimes it's just a coincidence, or sometimes we don't say it specifically. We say words like it's probably invoked something, or we put it in a very mild way. We don't point to causality. We describe the word, the good word for using the language is descriptions. We don't explain, we don't give cause and effect reasoning, but we describe phenomena, we describe relationships, we describe people's thinking processes. We don't suggest actions. Psychoanalysis doesn't go into actions. Sometimes we should, but we don't. So it's not conventional to say, do this, do that, but suggest, show directions, show where it leads, indicate positions and ways to think about, but not actions. We suggest taking specific positions. We emphasize a lot of neutrality nowadays. If you don't emphasize mutuality between therapist and patient, supervisor and supervisee, people might look at you in a strange way. Eyebrows might be raised. Words like conflict, unconscious, I said already, old school. So try to avoid this. Important know-how for writing is writing in the simplest way. Now, mentioning big names is important. I mean, your ideas can be wonderful, but probably somebody has said it before in a very clear, maybe in a previous way of thinking about the same issues, but they probably had some insight into it. So you put big names, but at the same time, the readers might think that they know much better than you what Winnicott said about this. So they might be critical about your interpretation of Winnicott. So just be a little careful about dropping names here. Consider targeted journals orientation, relational psychoanalysis, enactments, relationality, relations. There are few journals that specialize in this, like psychoanalytic perspectives, psychoanalytic dialogues, if you know the Americans one. Psychology, vulnerability, self-object, transference, narcissistic issues. If it's about this, there are specific journals that would take this language, this way, this approach, and not others. There are some journals think about implied psychoanalysis, and they specialize in this. If you have your ideas about how it applies to everyday life. So now the journals that are available and very recommended to go for: Psychodynamic Practice. Remember what I said before, and Melinda said also. It's a good journal, British German journal, and it deals with clinical issues and implementations of psychoanalytic principles into education, social work, medicine, every other ways, other disciplines. And so they are very interesting. Also, or about organizations, thinking psychodynamically about organizations' work. British Journal of Psychotherapy, it's a very good journal. Probably you know it also. It takes psychoanalytic, psychodynamic, analytical, psychological papers, Jungian papers, and they are broad-minded, and I think they're very good. They are the big analytic journals: the International Journal of Psychoanalysis, American Journal of Psychoanalysis, Contemporary Psychoanalysis, Journal of the Association of Psychoanalytic, Journal of the American Psychoanalytic Association. These are analytic journals, and Psychoanalytic Psychology is the journal of the the Division 39, the psychoanalytic division of the American Psychoanalytic Association. All right, just now let's go into the blind review process. Questions up to now or comments? It's too much information that I throw at you? Okay. Okay. Different policies on the blind review process and the editor's involvement. Frankly, between us, some editors are more involved and take too many decisions. Not the blind review process is not so blind. Let's say it this way. But there are some that work very much by the book. The peer review process, if you go through this, not through the open space, but through the academic section of papers. So 2-3 readers appreciate the papers in innovation, cohesion, and relevance. Relevance for their readership. Usually the readers are really good-willing and they have good intention. This is my experience. And specifically with the British journals, I had a very good experience with the readers' intentions and the way they approach their job. And they really try to help. Sometimes they want to be like, smart guys and say something smart, but then you have to distinguish which is which and take the important stuff out of it. They write comments to the author and evaluate. Acceptance, one possibility. Acceptance, which means as is, or with minor changes. Sometimes they ask for major changes, and sometimes there is a rejection. You do not have to be deterred by major changes required. It's okay. It's doable if it's reasonable, if it helps you with your project, if you see that, yes, firstly, you get shock because you think that you hope that your paper will be embraced and taken as is into publication. But secondly, you read it twice, 3 times, and then you see there's a good intention there and there's a good help out there. And good, sometimes major revisions can be very helpful to make it a good paper. A good review helps you to reconsider and make reasonable changes. You have to address all the readers' comments. You should not forget, quote unquote, forget one of the readers' comments. Just relate to it. Even if you refuse to change something, just explain it, why you would like to not respond to it. That's it. Okay, some questions, ideas about what I've been talking about.
Thank you. I found that really helpful, actually.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, that was, very briefly, very short. I just picked the highlights. We can talk hours and hours on this. I hope I didn't deter you. I didn't make it look too daunting and for you.